News that the Nigerian educational system, due to an unwholesome combination of neglect and mismanagement, has fallen over the years into a squalid state of disrepair. While in senior societies throughout the world, the education sector is considered one of the most important sectors that is given close attention. You will agree that education is not paid much attention and underfunded in Nigeria, particularly when we compare it to some other countries, even in Africa. But the questions are, how well do we utilize the little resources we receive? How much of it goes directly into teaching, research, and the development of infrastructure? What percentages goes into the payment of overheads? And what is the state of Nigerians' education? These are the issues that beg for urgent answers by stakeholders in the sector, and we will be dissecting on Ivory Towers, a program that put a searchlight on topical issues bordering around the sector, engaging critical concerns in the institution in order to keep you abreast of information and the happenings in the education sector. I have here with me in the studio Dr. Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu. He is a political scientist and public affairs analyst who will be doing justice to these critical issues. Welcome to television.
Thank you so very much.
How are you, sir?
I'm fine.
Okay. Doctor, as a stakeholder in the system, what do you think about the state of Nigerian education?
Well, the state of Nigerian education is reflected in the kind of the youth we are producing for employment, either by government, international organizations, or foreign bodies or foreign countries. The question we should ask ourselves is this: how competitive are Nigerian trained youth in terms of skills acquisition and development to the extent that they are able to compete with their peers across Africa and Asia, as well as the rest of the world? You know, I don't want to use the developed countries of the world because they've already developed their institutions. Some of these institutions are crumbling, some are on it, and they are reforming very fast. But if you contextualize the kind of skills we are given, even the certificate we are given does not equally give our youth the needed lifelong skills that will make them competitive, that will make them useful to themselves, that will make them to think and act in such a way that they can generate wealth for their nation. So the kind of education we give to our students in Nigeria is such that turns them into drones. They take from the system, they cannot give to the system, and that is why we have this structural unemployment. The issue of unemployment is not about government is not able to employ. You have two types of employment, private and public. So the education you receive will make you to fit into either private or public. But what is happening in Nigeria over time is the production of graduates for the consumption of the bureaucracy. And once the bureaucracy cannot employ, it becomes a challenge. But I think another trend is equally emerging. You have those young Nigerians that have gone abroad, that have studied, and they're coming back with ideas that have made them to be self-reliant, and then they are creating opportunities. And then those that I will refer to as local content, those that school within Nigeria that have little creativity, they're beginning to be challenged by those that are coming. But by and large, if you take a class of, say, 200 that will be graduating from the university, I bet you about 180 will be waiting for government employment. And that is why once there is employment opportunity in NNPC. You can imagine how many number of persons that used to apply. If you say, for instance, immigration, you find you go and check the number of persons that are applying. So sometimes you have a vacancy of 1,000, 10,000 persons are applying. It is because of the kind of education we are giving. If you compare that to other countries, for instance, like the emerging economies in Asia, the kind of education they are receiving are education. For instance, China. China understood long ago that the future of economy of the world is ICT. And you could see what China is doing and what Indians are doing in terms of ICT. They are driven by the needs of the society to structure their curriculum, to produce people that will really take care of that. The last time I know, about 5 years ago or thereabout, India was producing almost 260,000 ICT engineers that are globally certified and acclaimed that they can work anywhere in the world. So which means they are going to be exported outside India because the education has certified them. They've met the global standard, which means they can come to Nigeria and work. They can go to India, they can go to Ghana, they can go to Gambia, they can go to Europe. Right? Now, if such a situation exists where your own product can be exported to other countries of the world, then unemployment will be minimal and the challenges within the country will be minimal because you have people that are providing solutions and providing a solution to some of these problems.
Okay, Doctor, let's look at where we started from.
Yeah.
The foundation back in the ages, in the 1960s.
Yeah.
You realize that education then was better off compared to now.
Yeah.
So what is happening? Where did we start getting it wrong?
Two things basically.
Okay.
One has to do with those that were manning the educational institution. And they know the importance of education. They know the importance of giving somebody a certificate without meriting that certificate. So they don't compromise on standard. So it's strictly about standard. And the education system was a bit flexible because it is about one's ability. So if you can read, fine. At a point in time, even in Kano, there was what was known as craft schools. The craft schools has to do with somebody's creativity. It is a thing of the hand and the mind where they relate. So this is my thought. Okay, I can draw a pattern on what? On skin. And this pattern, once I finish it, it becomes a leather work. And this leather work can find its way into the palace of the Queen of England. And I will earn pounds. So the design of the educational curriculum addresses people's concern in terms of ability. So if you can read and write very well, we train you to become administrators. But if you are not good at reading and writing, okay, you are good with your hands, with your imagination, okay, we'll take you to what? Craft schools. And before you know it, everywhere Nigeria was producing and we're exporting. Now, the other problem again has to do with the philosophy behind education. The philosophy behind education was as crafted by the colonialists. We want to train clerks. We want to train those that will occupy places that will assist Nigeria to become like Europeans. So the conception of political science is not to study the political dynamics of Nigeria, but to study the institutions of Britain, America, and France, and the rest, so that we can come and replicate it even if they are failing. And that is the problem with our democracy.
But over 30 years now, at least we should have understand these problems are rectified.
We've not done that. We've not done that. For instance, education is working in Ghana to some regular extent because they are able to restructure their education to support the various sectors of human endeavors. If you go to Asia, what they've tactically done was to decolonize education. By decolonizing, it does not mean that we will not study the institutions of other countries to see what is working or what is not working so that we can adapt one or two to our own system. But what they've done practically is, when you say you want to become like Europeans, the implication there is that you don't have the capacity to manufacture, to produce those things that Europeans are producing and consuming. Therefore, you are now looking forward to what? To them to give you those things that you needed to be like them. So, for instance, if you want to operate democracy, you need experts in democratic governance. So they will export experts to Nigeria. So when will we start exporting experts to other countries? You see, learning has two components. You learn by doing or by experience. Somebody has done it before, and then you read from that, and then you think you've acquired that experience, and you can do what? Replicate. Or you do it yourself. And then by the time you start doing it yourself, you are bound to make mistakes, you commit errors, and then from those errors that you are committing, you are doing what? You are learning to refine the process. And before you know, 10 years ago, my brother, 10 years ago, if you are using Chinese phone, Nigerians will laugh at you, that you are a very poor person. But today, almost all the elites are using Chinese phone. Because of what? Because they've gone beyond trying to become like the Western people by importing everything to doing what? To doing it themselves, and they learn from. So the educational curriculum is designed, one, to be like the West, to compete with the West, but again, it is us that will do it from within, and then we learn from our mistakes, then we refine. And that was what Lee Kuan Yew did in Singapore. He realizes that the educational system that was bequeathed to them cannot propel the kind of development we want. So what did he do? He reformed the educational system, first by introducing Chinese as a language of instruction in the schools, and then he made it possible for English to be used, because previously it is English that is used. But he said, no. We want to communicate with our people. Let them understand when we're speaking to them, they understand their environment. Now, maybe this English is giving them problem. For instance, in Nigeria, you from cradle to grave, you are still learning English. From cradle to grave. Our children, for instance, now, they're in primary and secondary school, they are learning English up to this moment. So at what point will they master this English to the extent that they can use it to address the challenges of our time? Oh, you say, no, we can give what? We can have varieties. So what he did was, he established universities where Chinese was used to teach. So if you feel you don't want to waste your time to read, to use English to learn, go to those schools, and they're teaching sciences, everything, literature, and the rest. Now, he allowed foreign universities to come to Singapore to equally establish for those that want to acquire knowledge in one way or the other, and as well the English schools subsisted. So this is a problem-solving attitude. Any educational system that is not built on the strength of producing people that can think, that can act, and then solve problems, what I call problem-solving attitude to education, that country is not going to get it right.
Well, the narration so far, of course, if, like you rightly said, sir, this boils down to two things, and that reminds me that if these things have not been done for over years, then it boils down to corruption.
Yeah.
So tell me, doctor, why is there so much corruption in the sector?
Well, there is so much corruption in the sector. You see, the educational system of Nigeria is not devoid of interferences from the society. The teachers, the students, the laborers, and everybody are all Nigerians. We go to the same market, we go to the same filling station, we go to the same park, and then we shop in the same places depending on our income. So what we see in the education sector is an exchange or interplay between the society and the educational system. Unfortunately, all the vices that are endemic in the Nigerian society has found its way into the educational system. Now you want to admit, and somebody will tell you there is limited space, you need to bring something. So, in fact, most of the universities, though there are a few universities that have overcome that, they are beginning to pick students based on their competence. But the trouble is, you have, the corruption in Nigeria has a supply and demand function. So people are willing to give and people are willing to take. So you don't have anyone that will say, I'm not ready to give and I'm not ready to take. And the system, again, has not been punishing people that are taking. So even those that are not taking are not even encouraged, because they look at you as you are stupid, you are poor, you are suffering simply because you refuse to participate. But again, you still have some persons that are there, they are upright, they don't take. But you know the implication? Almost all the students used to hate them because they don't play balls. So if you collect money and you give grade, you are a very good person. Now, what we fail to understand is this: at the point of our retirement, the same people we give certificate are waiting for us to come and bribe them for them to process our pension, and then we continue to lament that the system is not working. Why would the system work when you assist to produce those that will destroy the country and destroy the future of your children, including yourself? So education is a very serious thing. And that is why if you read Plato's Republic, the first thing he talked about was education. And he said there must be distinction within the population. He said those that are given to reason, right? If they should be trained, but in training them, he listed what the training should consist. I don't want to go into that, but he said, in training them, if you identify those that are given to reasoning, he said they should become the administrators because they will think very well and they will take decisions. Those he called the philosopher king. Then the second component of that he referred to as what? He said they are the soldiers because they are courageous. So they should defend the country. If you don't fall between these two categories, he said you are driven by your appetite. So they are the what? Artisans. So they should be trained in the way of artisans. So they should be doing the POPs for us, tar the roads, farm, and the rest and the rest. The reason for this, though it's not sacrosanct, is that people should be, because somebody who is driven by his appetite for something, somebody who is controlled by his or her appetite, is not thinking about what is good for you, what is good for me, what is good for the other person. What is good for him at that point is to satisfy whatever innate demand that is driving him. So for instance, if he closes from office today, he wants to go to a beer parlor and drink like 5 bottles, then the money has not come. And a Nigerian is supposed to render services to, I came to the office to say, okay, we want to so and so forms, and he tells you the forms are finished, but I can be able to do something for you. So corruption in the educational sector is part of the problem of Nigeria, because the educational system of Nigeria is the same thing as Nigeria. But the problem was, and still is, those that have been...
Doctor, we will continue from the corruption as soon as we come back after this short break.
Wow! The fastest internet service provider that offers optic broadband to residential, business, and enterprise to customers is here, Spectranet. We are the first and the best internet service provider to launch 4G light internet services in Nigeria. That's right. Spectranet provides fast, reliable, affordable internet services to homes and businesses. We are currently covering Lagos, Abuja, Ibadan, and Port Harcourt, as many more cities will soon be added. Locate our head office at Plot 36B Mobology Johnson Avenue, Oregon Industrial Estate, Ikeja, Lagos. Abuja office is at 15 Bangor Street, Wuse, Abuja, Nigeria. For products and inquiries, please call 0700-234-5678. Think of Internet, think Spectranet.
If you are just joining us, this is Ivory Towers on Television Nigerian. My guest has been Dr. Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu, a political scientist and a public affairs analyst. Now, Doctor, let's talk about, talk about the funding in education. Do you think the education sector is underfunded over time? Because if you look at the recent budget for the 2019, which is about 8.3 trillion, and the budget that was allocated to the education sector was about 620.5 billion, which has fallen below the standard as recommended by UNESCO.
Yeah.
That developing countries, you don't like using that word, like Nigeria, should allocate up to 15%
Yes.
to education. But if you look at the past 3 years simultaneously, you realize that it's 4%, no, 5%, 6%, and now this recent budget is 7%.
Yeah.
What do you think? What is your take on this? If you compare it to other African countries like Ghana, and South Africa, who is even giving more than the 15% as recommended by UNESCO.
You know, the difference between Nigeria and some of those countries, for instance, South Africa, It's because South Africa's institutions are woven into the governance process. So government is equally tapping from the researches that are being generated from those institutions. That of Nigeria is not like that. That is not the case in Nigeria.
Okay.
I want to slightly disagree with this issue of underfunding. Underfunding has become more or less like how do I put it? Omnibus word that is loaded. We need to unpack it. If you reduce it to funding, the next question would be the little that has been given, what has been achieved with it? This should be the next question. You see, in education administration, apart from the financial components of it, you equally have issues around discipline. And that is why, for instance, in Nigeria, before you are given certificate as a graduate, part of the citation used to be he or she has been found to be was found to be worthy in character and learning. Now it speaks to two things: character and learning. So, which means the person that is graduating is somebody of integrity, somebody who is highly disciplined, somebody who will not corrupt the process, that will not assist corruption. And then learning, it means that all the modules that is supposed to discipline this person, to give the person that very particular knowledge within the context, the person has passed those modules. That is the implication. Now, by the time these graduates leave the university and they are highly indisciplined, they don't display knowledge.
Sorry to cut you short there, Doctor. Yeah. Now, I still want to look into the money being invested.
I'm coming into that.
We have the resources.
Yeah, we have the resources.
Yes.
You see, the truth of the matter is, whatever, we have this mentality in Nigeria, the mentality of throwing money at problems. We've thrown money at problems in Nigeria and there are no results. The deficit in that is the discipline with which we judiciously use these resources. For instance, you've heard of vice chancellors invited by either ICPC or EFCC to come and account for monies they've taken away from the system. How do you reconcile that with underfunding? You see, Nigeria is a very rich country, no doubt about it. But Nigeria is a very poor country. At the same time, that is the paradox. Because these resources, by the time we budget and we channel them into the process, they don't even get to the problems. I can give you, for instance, you have research fundings that are sent to universities, but you hardly see lecturers going for such activities because the money will not even go into that research in the first place. It is spent on things that has to do with the benefit of those that are managing, the few that are managing the institution, rather than that very particular graduate assistant that needed to do what? He has the zeal. He wants to excel. So once we give him little funding to embark on our research, you're going to see result for such money. So it was because of this issue of corruption that government said, okay, we are going to come up with what? TED fund, tertiary institution fund, where tertiary institution will fund infrastructural development as well as other components of the university. Look, most of the universities cannot and have refused to meet the requirement to access some of these funds. The statistics are there. And even TED Fund said something the last time, that the quality of researches that are coming out of our tertiary institutions are something that are giving them concern. Now, if you reduce it to problem of funding 25%, 35%, even if you give 100%, and the needed commitment and discipline that goes with the judicious application of these funds for results-oriented planning and execution, you are not going to get anything out of the system. Agreed, it is small compared to other African countries, but those African countries, go to their universities. Why is it that today our own children are leaving Nigeria and going to Ghana? For instance, they are leaving Nigeria and going to Uganda. 10 years ago, if you mention Uganda, nobody will take you seriously. But you find our own children now going to Ghana, going to Uganda. It tells us something. In the 80s, in the 70s, the reverse was the case. You find foreigners trooping into our own universities. Because of what? Because of the quality of educational facility, because of the quality of the curriculum, because of the quality of the teachers, and the efficiency of the system. But that is not the case today.
Well, yeah, that's much actually. Now, looking at this whole thing, corruption, the state of Nigerian education, do you think that Nigeria's education system is beyond redemption?
No, it's not beyond redemption.
So, what is the way forward?
The way forward is to hold those that are charged with the management of resources. You know, one thing that is even lacking in Nigeria is this. In other countries, before you even become the dean, of postgraduate, right? You are asked what is your vision for that very particular institution. Before you become the vice chancellor, the one they call it president of that institution. In Nigeria, we call them vice chancellors. Before you become the vice chancellor of any institution, what are your plans? So it means that you already have set objectives you want to, and then equally where you get funding for the institution. And that is why in those universities, somebody like Dangote will have endowment fund in one department or one department or the other. So you have these fundings. But in the case of Nigeria, no plan, no nothing. Simply because you are a professor, you can aspire to become the vice chancellor of any university, and then either based on ethnicity or religion or whatever, you are given that place and you wait for subvention. And then as soon as subvention comes, you begin to behave like the politicians we used to insult. How will you be able to do it? So we've seen vice chancellors that are serious, that have turned their universities around. I can tell you of a particular university in the Northeast, is a state university. They have dates in that school. The greenery is something else. You don't, as a student, pluck the date. You must allow it to fall to the ground before you pick it to wash and eat. That is discipline. So we have those people that are competent. Look at what is happening in JAM. Look at what is happening in some of these universities. So it is about holding those that are charged with the management of our funds in the university accountable, just the way we are shouting at all the politicians in this country.
All right. Thank you so very much, Doctor. It's been a pleasure having you in the studio with me. And thank you very much, sir.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, this is where I draw the curtain of today's edition of Ivory Towers. Please join me again next time, where I will be bringing to you more topical issues from the sector. Thank you for watching. I remain your host, Amina Adamo.